G'day guys and welcome back to the Drewzy channel, joined again today by Jesse. Hello Jesse.
Hello my queen.
The season's coming up and every year the ladder changes, Jesse. I don't care how good you think your footy club was. You know, Geelong, they were premiers in 2022. Next year they didn't even make finals. So what we're going to do is a two-part series, I suppose. Today we're going to talk about 4 teams who are most likely to drop out of the top 8. Then we're going to do another one where we talk about 4 teams who are most likely to jump into the 8. So for reference, in 2022, the Bulldogs, Richmond, Fremantle and Geelong came out of the top 8. So that's basically the premise of the video. Multiple examples if you go back through the ladders. I don't have time to do that right now, but it happens. If you enjoy this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you're new. Trying to get relevant again. Hashtag make Drewzy relevant again in the comments. Well, let's get underway, Jesse. Who is your first team from last year's top 8 that you think is going to slip out?
Oh, I'm glad you've thrown me into the firing line first. So the whole premise of this video is hard because I've had to select 4 teams that I probably would bet on making finals. But if the premise is who is the most likely to fall out of finals, when you consider like we shouldn't have expected Richmond to fall out, they got Taranto and Hopper, and then they fell out. The Cats missing finals was crazy. So I've just picked 4 candidates. I'll go with one. Let's start with the Melbourne Footy Club. And this isn't so much based on list talent. Absolutely not. But sometimes, teams do get a little bit jaded. So that's kind of the angle I'm coming at it from. If it's a list talent point of view, you probably put the D's top 2, in my honest opinion.
Yeah.
And I sound like I'm sitting on the fence here. But I do think that they might, I think there's more reason to suggest that they might be a little bit jaded after a few years at the top, an aging list, a little bit of outside noise at the moment. Sometimes that galvanizes clubs. Sometimes it kind of gets them to break down. Now, what are the circumstances Melbourne missed the finals? I'm not saying they're going to come out and lose their first 6 or anything ridiculous, although shit like that does happen. But with the D's, what does it look like if they're 10 wins and 8 losses, with 5 or 6 weeks to go in the season, and they're battling for 6th or 7th? Like, how does their mentality, how does their resolve get tested? So, again, I'm kind of conjuring this, but I think Melbourne is one to keep an eye on for all those reasons I just talked about. What are your thoughts?
To reiterate, Jesse is not predicting Melbourne to come out of the top 8. This is just making a case for it.
Yeah.
So, Melbourne aren't one for me. I think they are in the top 4 most likely to stay in.
Fair.
I think they just need to make a few sort of, mainly with their forward entries, just like a few slight tweaks, and they'll be on for the premiership again. So I'm not going to go with them. My first one, I'm going to throw up, massively controversial, which this video is. I'm going to say Brisbane potentially slip out of the top 8 in 2024. This is based on the premise that so many teams that make the grand final in the year before have this, not even a premiership hangover, like a grand final pit of depression. When Brisbane threw the absolute kitchen sink at winning that flag, and they got so close, painfully close to the holy grail of football, and it just gets taken away from them. How much would that demoralize the squad? Other ones that come to mind, Adelaide in 2017. Who else have we seen drop off, Jesse?
Part of these were injury related, but there was Sydney. GWS in 2020.
Yeah.
They had a bad grand final, missed the finals, I'm pretty sure.
Again, I think Brisbane will make the top 8, but for the point of this video, I'm going to say the Lions.
Yeah, just to clarify my point of why I had maybe Melbourne and not Brisbane, it's just my vibe from Brisbane is that they are such a resilient, consistent team. I think the gap between their best and worst is so minuscule. I can think of so few, if any, occasions over the last 4 years under Fagan or however long it's been, where they've just come out and not looked themselves. I think there's a Geelongness to them in a way where I just can't see them collapsing. But again, there's so many unpredictable ones that have happened in history. The next one I've got, and this pains me to say it because I do also want to consider them a premiership contender, but I think Carlton, again, we're just considering the potential for them to not live up to potential. And the only thing with Carlton, right, is just that when you consider the back end of the season was such a stark contrast to the first half of the season, that there's just this quality of Carlton where you just don't know. You just don't know. And I think, comparing them and contrasting them to, say, a Collingwood and a Brisbane, and even a GWS, who I know started the year poorly last year as well, I just think with Carlton, there's the overhang of a previous generation who got there and failed. So again, am I tipping them to miss the finals? No, but like you said, the premise of this video is to find which teams could fall out and make logical arguments for it. The talent is there, but sometimes it's just the application.
I'm also going to put Carlton in there. Don't take this personally, Carlton fans. If you also look at their final series last year, like they made it to a prelim. So the expectations of Carlton fans this upcoming season is massive. But when you consider like Sydney weren't necessarily at their best last year and Melbourne dominated them on the scoreboard in terms of scoring shots, just couldn't execute in front of goal. Maybe Carlton in a parallel universe didn't make a prelim last year. Based on that premise and the fact that they haven't made finals in a long time, they probably will stay in there. I'll probably predict them in my ladder prediction to stay in. But based on that, I'd say they are one of the more likely out of the top 8 to slip out. Who are you rocking with next, Jesse? We've done 2 each.
Maybe Port. So, just to clarify as well, part of this exercise is actually going through which 4 teams you don't think are going to fall out, okay? So for me, that was Collingwood, Brisbane, and the 2 Sydney teams. I just don't think I see it. And that just leaves these other 4 clubs. So if I had to make a case for Port Adelaide, a couple of things. In 2022, they had come out, with all reason to believe that they would be a premiership contender after making prelims in 2 years in a row, I think. In 2022, they started 0-5, rectified their season towards the back end, sure. They and then, launched into a good 2023. But, when I considered particularly the back end of the season, I just felt like we did see maybe an over-reliance on some of their absolute young stars like Rosie and Butters. And when Rosie and Butters didn't quite fire in finals, Port Adelaide looked a bit exposed. Now they've made moves, they've traded in 4 key position players. Don't really expect them to miss the finals, but I don't think they're not vulnerable at all, if that makes sense.
Just based on the sort of, prestige, I suppose, we've seen with Sydney and like the culture at GWS that's been brewing there, you just don't know what you're going to get with Port sometimes. So for that reason, I agree. I want to put Port in as my 3rd. All right, last one, Jesse. I suppose you're going with St Kilda?
Yeah, that is the only team left. So to clarify on Sydney GWS really shortly why I don't think of them, I think Sydney's had its bad year and they still made 8th and they were still decimated by injuries. I think they're really well coached and in the same way as what I said about Brisbane, have this Geelongness about them where I just don't know if I'd see them faltering. And GWS as well, I think they just played such a captivating attacking brand of football towards the end of the year that I just can't bet against them. So with St Kilda, now I actually like St Kilda as a bit of a dark horse for the 4 this year because I really like the fact that they're a really defensively minded side. The game plan works under Ross Lyon. They've got the players to apply it and they've also drafted really well. Some young talent they've got there can change the way they attack and they had forward half injuries. So that's my case for why St Kilda will be good. However, we've seen a real trend with the Saints where they don't finish seasons well. And I don't know if that's game plan related. They can't really apply themselves for the entire season. Maybe that changes as the team gets more mature and fitter. But long story short, we could see a good St Kilda in the first half of the year and the back end is disappointing and that makes them, a little bit vulnerable here.
They were sort of the least convincing team coming into finals, right?
Yeah, I don't know if the results are necessarily really poor, but I think the way they played their football was a stark contrast.
So we agreed on all but one. I had Brisbane going out and you had Melbourne.
Yeah.
But get down in the comments what you think. This was hard. Like, you don't want to upset people in videos like this, but it's just the reality of the Australian Football League. Things change drastically season to season. So get your say in the comments below and don't hate on us if we chose your club. You can bash on our clubs because we both finished in the bottom 6.
This is a really brave video concept because the whole premise of this video is insulting and it only serves to piss people off. So hashtag make Drewzy relevant again.
And if you want to see if your team will make the top 8, tune into the next video. We're going to talk about 4 teams that are most likely to rise up into the top 8. Thank you for joining me today, Jesse. Go check out Jesse's channel. You know where he is, at True Footy. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care. You plonkers.